Krupp, steel, blood, and profit, the industrial empire behind Hitler's war machine. You are on War Profits, where we uncover the darkest and most profitable stories of World War II corporations. Picture this, it's 1945. The Allied forces march through the ruins of Essen, Germany. Smoke still rises from the rubble. Factories lie twisted like broken bones. And in the center of this industrial graveyard stands a name that once meant power, precision, and profit. A name whispered in boardrooms and screamed on battlefields. A name that forged the very weapons that tore Europe apart. Krupp. When you think of the Third Reich, you think of Hitler, Goebbels, Himmler. But behind the swastikas and the speeches, behind the tanks rolling through Poland and the U-boats prowling the Atlantic, there was steel, mountains of it. And one family controlled that steel like kings controlled kingdoms. The Krupps didn't just supply Hitler's war machine, they were the war machine. Every panzer tank that crushed resistance, every artillery shell that rained down on cities, every submarine that hunted convoys in the dark. Krupp steel, Krupp engineering, Krupp profit. But here's the question that should haunt us. How does a company, a family business, become the beating heart of genocide? How do spreadsheets and profit margins justify slavery? And when the smoke cleared and the bodies were counted, how did they walk away? This is the story of Krupp. Steel, blood, and profit. And it begins long before Hitler ever dreamed of conquest. 1811, Napoleon's armies sweep across Europe. The German states are fractured, weak, divided. In the small city of Essen, a young man named Friedrich Krupp inherits his father's struggling forge. The business is failing. Debts pile up. Workers leave. But Friedrich has a hopeful vision. He wants to create cast steel, the hardest, most durable metal known to man. Steel that can build empires. He fails, over and over. The furnaces crack, the metal shatters. His health deteriorates. In 1826, Friedrich dies, leaving behind a widow, 8 children, and a factory on the edge of collapse. His eldest son, Alfred, is just 14 years old. Alfred Krupp should have been a footnote in history. A boy forced to abandon his education to save dying business. But Alfred was different, obsessed, relentless. He slept in the factory. He experimented with alloys. He studied metallurgy like a monk studies scripture. And slowly, painfully, he cracked the code. By the 1850s, Krupp steel was the finest in Europe. Railroads needed it. Bridges demanded it. And then the militaries came calling. Alfred Krupp didn't invent the arms industry, but he perfected it. He realized something that would echo through history. War is the most profitable business on earth. Governments pay any price for superiority, and Krupp could deliver superiority. In 1851, at the Great Exhibition in London, Krupp displayed a massive cast steel cannon. The world gasped. Orders flooded in. Prussia, Russia, Austria, even Egypt. Everyone wanted Krupp guns. By the time Alfred died in 1887, the Krupp works employed 20,000 people. The family was among the richest in Europe, and their motto, forged in steel and ambition, was simple. We live to serve. But serve whom? Fast forward to 1918. Germany loses the First World War. The Treaty of Versailles strips the nation of its military. No more than 100,000 soldiers. No tanks, no heavy artillery, no air force. For Krupp, this should have been the end. Their entire fortune was built on weapons. Now, weapons were illegal. But the Krupps were survivors. They pivoted. Locomotives, agricultural equipment, cash registers, hopeful to keep the furnaces burning. Publicly, they obeyed the treaty. Privately, they prepared for the day Germany would rearm. And then, in 1933, that day arrived. Adolf Hitler becomes chancellor. Within months, he begins dismantling Versailles. He needs weapons, tanks, guns, ships, and he needs them fast. Who does he turn to? The family that never stopped believing in German steel. Gustav Krupp von Bohlen und Halbach, the head of the dynasty, meets with Hitler. The Führer makes his pitch. Rebuild Germany's military, make us strong again. In return, Krupp will have unlimited contracts, government subsidies, and a monopoly on armament production. Gustav hesitates, not out of morality, out of caution. The Nazis are radical, unpredictable. But his son, Alfred, sees the excited opportunity. This isn't just business, this is destiny. Germany will rise, and Krupp will rise with it. The deal is struck, and the furnaces of Essen roar back to life. If this angry corporate greed disturbs you, hit like to support our dives into historical archives and comment what you would do in such a dilemma. Would you refuse Hitler's money, or would you tell yourself it's just business? By 1936, Krupp is producing artillery at a staggering rate. The factory floors stretch for miles. Smokestacks pierce the sky like iron fingers. Workers pour in from across Germany, lured by wages and the promise of hopeful national pride. But it's not enough. Hitler's ambitions are insatiable. He wants more tanks, more guns, more steel. And Krupp delivers. The Panzer tanks that blitz through Poland in 1939? Krupp armor. The 88mm flat guns that theorize Allied bombers? Krupp engineering. The massive railway guns, like the legendary Gustav gun, capable of firing 7-ton shells over 25 miles? Pure Krupp. But here's where the story turns. Because building a war machine this massive requires something more than steel. It requires bodies. In 1940, as Germany conquers France, Belgium, and the Netherlands, millions of prisoners flood into the Reich. Soldiers, civilians, Jews, Slavs. The Nazis call them angry, subhuman. Krupp calls them disgusted labor. At first, it's sarcastic, voluntary, sort of. Workers from occupied territories are recruited with promises of food and wages. But as the war drags on and casualties mount, the pretense drops. By 1942, Krupp is using forced labor on a massive scale. Prisoners of war, concentration camp inmates, people torn from their homes and shipped to Essen in cattle cars. They work 12-hour shifts in the foundries. The heat is unbearable, the air thick with coal dust and chemical fumes. Safety? Non-existent. A man loses his hand in the machinery? Replace him. A woman collapses from exhaustion? Drag her out and bring in another. The Krupp overseers don't see humans. They see units of production. And the numbers are staggering. By 1943, over 100,000 forced laborers are working in Krupp facilities. 70,000 of them are prisoners of war. Thousands more are concentration camp inmates shipped directly from Auschwitz and Buchenwald. Let that sink in. While families across Europe are being exterminated, some are being kept alive just long enough to build the weapons that will kill more families. On War Profits, we tell the real story without filters. Where are you watching from? Share this with someone who needs to know these secrets. One survivor, a Polish prisoner named Tadeusz, later testified at Nuremberg. He described arriving at the Krupp factory in Essen in 1943. Barely alive. He was assigned to the steel mill. The foreman, a German civilian, told him plainly, "You will work until you die, and when you die, we will replace you." Tadeusz worked for 2 years. He watched men collapse and be dragged away. He saw prisoners beaten for slowing down. He saw bodies piled in corners waiting for disposal. And through it all, the Krupp family lived in luxury just miles away, in their sprawling Villa Hügel, hosting dinners and collecting art. Alfred Krupp, now running the company after his father's health declined, knew. He had to know. He toured the factories. He signed the contracts with the SS for concentration camp labor. He approved the budgets. And he did nothing to stop it, because stopping it would mean losing profit, and profit was the only god Krupp worshipped. But the war is turning. By 1944, the Allies are bombing Essen relentlessly. The factories are hit again and again. Production slows. Workers, both forced and free, die in the rubble. The Krupp empire, once invincible, begins to crack. And then, in April 1945, American troops roll into Essen. They find the factories in ruins. They find mass graves. They find survivors, skeletal and traumatized, still locked in barracks. And they find documents, contracts, memos, proof. Alfred Krupp is arrested, along with 11 of his top executives. They are charged with crimes against humanity, plunder, slavery, murder. The Nuremberg trials begin. The world watches. And for the first time, a corporation is held accountable for war crimes. The prosecution presents evidence, testimonies from survivors, documents signed by Alfred himself, photographs of the camps. The defense argues that Krupp was just following orders, that they had no choice, that they were victims of the Nazi regime too. The judges don't buy it. In 1948, Alfred Krupp is found guilty. He is sentenced to 12 years in prison. His assets are confiscated. The Krupp empire is to be dismantled. Justice, it seems, hope, has been served. But here's the surprise. The Cold War is starting. The Soviets are the new enemy. And suddenly, the Americans need German industry. They need steel. They need manufacturing. They need Krupp. In 1951, just 3 years into his sentence, Alfred Krupp is released. His assets are returned. The dismantling order is quietly dropped. By 1953, Krupp is back in business. Not weapons, officially, but steel, machinery, infrastructure. The same factories, the same family, the angry profit. The survivors? Most received nothing. No reparations, no apologies, just silence. If this makes your blood boil, smash that like button. Comment below. Do you think Krupp should have been shut down forever? And subscribe to War Prophets for more stories they don't teach in schools. Today, the Krupp name is gone, merged, rebranded. The company became ThyssenKrupp, a respectable global corporation. They make elevators, cars, steel for skyscrapers.
Their website mentions their rich history, but glosses over the 1940s. There are museums, memorials, acknowledgments of sarcastic, regrettable wartime activities. But walk through Essen today and you can still see the Villa Hügel, a mansion built on blood money. Now it's a museum. Tourists visit. They admire the art, the architecture, the gardens. Few ask how it was paid for. And that's the legacy of Krupp. Not the steel, not the engineering, but the silence. The ability to commit atrocities, serve a genocidal regime, profit from slavery, and then, when the dust settles, simply rebrand and move on. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. Krupp didn't lose. They won. They survived. They thrived. And the disgusted world let them.
So what do we do with this? How do we reconcile the fact that the angry company that built Hitler's war machine now builds the elevators we ride every day? That the disgusted family that enslaved thousands now has their name on universities and cultural foundations? We remember, we confront, we refuse to let the past be sanitized. Because the war ended, but the profit never stopped. And if we forget that, if we let corporations erase their crimes with time and money, then we're complicit. We're saying that profit matters more than people, that steel is worth more than souls. Krupp built an empire on blood, and we have to ask ourselves how many empires today are doing the same. This is War Prophets. If this story shook you, share it. Tag someone who needs to hear it. And tell me in the comments, what modern company do you think deserves this kind of investigation? Because history doesn't repeat, but it sure as hell rhymes. And the furnaces are still burning.